Hey up everyone, how's it going? This is another GPU review actually, and today we're testing the GTX 1060, more specifically the 3GB version. Launching all the way back in 2016, this GPU was a good mid-ranger, so it was perfectly well suited for a budget-ish 1080p rig, so sort of a mid-range PC. And coming in at a price of 199 USD, which is 100 less than the 6GB version of this, it was very popular in fact. And it's still quite popular on Steam as well, with about 10% of the users still using this, I believe. Despite being on the actual same GPU core, the GP106, as its bigger brother, it does have about 10% of the CUDA cores reduced, so it only has 1152 CUDA cores compared to the bigger brother, and 3GB less of VRAM. Okay, so the card we have on test today is the PNY single fan version. It's quite weird that having all this shroud and having only one fan. The heatsink isn't that big either, so yeah, there's just a lot of bare PCB. I think PNY could have done a bit of a better core on this. It could have had two fans easily, but hey ho, it is like sort of an entry level card, so it's not amazing. The rear I/O on this card is pretty good, so you've got one DVI, 3 display ports and one HDMI, so it's pretty much got everything apart from VGA. If you still use that for whatever reason, you shouldn't. You should be using either HDMI or DisplayPort. So yeah, it's got you covered. Right, so let's test this card. How does it perform in today's world? In 2021, how does this perform? Today we're testing it on my current system, so it's got a Ryzen 9 3950X and 32GB of RAM at 2666 MHz. So let's get into the benchmarking. Getting into the benchmarks today, first game up is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and in the in-game benchmark on the high preset, the performance was pretty good. So the 3GB 1060 got 47 FPS on average, following that up for 35 FPS for the 1% low and 16 FPS for the 0.1% low. This indicates a few stutters, but to be honest it wasn't too bad and the gameplay experience was still pretty decent. And we were using just under the 3GB on the graphics card as well for the VRAM, so we were cutting it close, and you'll find out that's a common trend for today. Next game up is Cyberpunk 2077. Yet again, Cyberpunk proves to be a bit of a GPU killer. Well, I think it's kind of the next generation Crisis. It's either that or it's just a really bad polished game, and no matter what you play it on really, it sort of doesn't perform very well. Anyways, on the lowest preset, while running around the Kabuki area, which is near V's apartment, we managed to get 40 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 27 FPS and a 0.1% low of 18 FPS. I feel there is still room for optimization in Cyberpunk. It's still not there optimization wise, but I believe CDPR can put it out of the bag and actually make this game runnable on a lot of PC hardware. Red Dead Redemption 2 makes another return on the benchmarking roster today, and I like to test Red Dead Redemption 2 mainly because it's such a GPU intensive game. It's not too bad on the CPU, but on the GPU it's really intensive. So I set the game to medium settings with high textures, and in the in-game benchmark we managed to get 38 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 24 FPS and a 0.1% low of 11 FPS. If you want a 60 FPS experience with this game, I'd say lower everything to low apart from the textures, keep them on high. It will still look better than console and perform twice as good as console as well. As always, Fortnite performed pretty well. Only issues with it is a bit of stutter, but to be honest it's not too bad, and I've noticed that with pretty much every card I test anyway. So I believe the stuttering issue is more down to the actual game and not the card, so the card is fine in this instance. Anyways, on the high settings on the Battle Royale map we managed to get 102 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 66 FPS and a 0.1% low of 34 FPS. Fortnite is always a really good performer, and if you want to lower everything to low because you're a professional player, you want to get the high refresh rates and you've got a 240Hz monitor, you can lower it to low and you will easily get over 200 FPS. Next up is Far Cry 5, and it's actually a brand new game to the benchmarking roster, as it's a pretty good blend between GPU utilisation and CPU utilisation, so it taxes both. Anyways, with the normal preset, we managed to get 57 FPS on average, 45 for the 1% low and 20 for the 0.1% low. Some good performance here from the 1060, although the VRAM was pretty close on the limit. Despite that, you still have a fantastic gaming experience on this card. Yet again, F1 2020 makes another appearance on the benchmarking roster, and with the game being optimised very well, the 1063GB performed quite good here, getting 95 FPS on average with a 1% low of 75 FPS and a 0.1% low of 49 FPS. As always, the benchmarking run was done in Australia in the wet, so it's sort of a worst case scenario for the graphics card, so it doesn't get much worse than this. The last game up is GTA 5. Because it launched for PC back in 2015, it's pretty easy to run for newer cards and, surprisingly, it still looks really good as well. Performance here was really good with 115 FPS on average, 86 for the 1% low and 76 for the 0.1% low. From playing this, there was virtually no stutter at all, really great performance, and to be honest, it was quite easy on the VRAM as well. Okay, so after all that benchmarking, I can confirm this is still quite a powerful, within reason and relevant card. Only problem is, and it was a consistent problem, is the 3GB of video memory. If you had the 6GB version of this card, you're still happy and ready to go. Pretty much every game we tested today was pretty much at the limit of 3GB. It was around sort of 2.5GB and above. But you find today with 3GB of video memory, but in the next sort of games coming out, Cyberpunk's pretty heavy on VRAM. It might get a bit hard for you, so just be a bit wary in that. And if you're using this for esports games, you're set for years to come, to be honest. And that brings me to my conclusion. Is this card worth it in 2021? Yes, definitely. I can wholeheartedly recommend it. If you bought this in 2016 or 2017, you're still happy gaming for another 2 years to come. That VRAM though is getting sort of a concern. If you had the 6GB version, you're fine for another 3 years now at least, unless if your needs change for whatever reason. Main reason why I recommend this more is these aren't as hot with miners right now. Miners want cards with more than 4GB of video memory. This only has 3, so miners are going to sort of overlook this, and it's going to be left down to us gamers who actually want this. And if you're trying to find like an esports build or something like that, make an esports build, this card would do you for absolute years to come. So this is perfectly fine for an esports build as well. So if you want to buy 1063GB for around £100, I'd wholeheartedly recommend it. It's definitely worth it. It's amazing performance for what you're paying. It's similar to a 970, and 970s have definitely gone up in price recently. So yeah, if you like the video, like it. If you liked it even more, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.